You know that one quiet residential neighborhood in your town that just feels like completely frozen in time?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, literally nothing has changed since the 70s.
Right. We all know one.
Yeah.
But imagine what happens when that exact kind of neighborhood decides to just completely reinvent itself.
It's usually a recipe for total chaos, honestly.
It really is. Like, imagine trying to solve a housing crisis by actively targeting the three biggest commercial footprints in your city for demolition.
Right, which sounds crazy.
Yeah. On paper, wiping out your major retail hubs sounds like municipal financial suicide.
Yeah.
But if you look closely at the mechanics behind it, actively destroying the traditional shopping mall might actually be, well, the most brilliant blueprint for the future of the North American suburb.
It is a radical departure from the status quo for sure, because, I mean, for half a century, suburbs have relied on those massive commercial centers as their economic anchors.
Right.
Dismantling them is basically urban open heart surgery.
And that is exactly the surgery we are scrubbing in for today. So we're looking at a deeply comprehensive source document called the Côte-Saint-Luc Master Plan.
Yes.
And by the way, you can find this in full text, and there are audio breakdowns too, over on wikiresidents.ca and infodrone.ca.
Highly recommend checking those out.
Definitely. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how Côte-Saint-Luc, which is this mature, notoriously quiet municipality on the island of Montreal, is basically weaponizing the death of the suburban mall.
Yeah, to pull off the greatest urban transformation in its recent history.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the sheer scale of a 20-year master plan proposing 4,000 new housing units, we have to, look at the paralysis that forced their hand in the first place.
Well, the catalyst for a shock of this magnitude is almost always profound stagnation.
Right.
Like, a municipality doesn't just wake up and propose a 35% population bump for the sake of, like, an architectural vanity project.
No, of course not.
The data from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the CMHC, it paints this really stark picture of a city that essentially just stopped functioning as a growing organism.
It's wild. The numbers in the report are almost hard to believe, especially for an island environment like Montreal.
Oh, absolutely.
They had only 1,175 housing starts over the last 20 years.
Barely 1,000 units in 2 decades.
Right. And since 2020, development has been functionally at zero. Like nothing.
Which is dangerous. That kind of statistical flatline is a massive red flag, because when your housing supply is frozen, the calendar doesn't stop.
Yeah, time keeps marching on.
Exactly. Infrastructure continues to degrade, weather takes its toll on the roads, the underground pipes rust, and most importantly, the demographic makeup of your city ages.
So it reminds me less of a quiet, stable neighborhood and more of like a municipal reverse mortgage.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Like the city has essentially been borrowing against its own future survival just to keep things looking quiet and predictable today. I mean, it's like a video game.
A video game?
Yeah, like if you're playing a city builder video game and you leave it paused for 2 decades, and then Mayor David Tordjman just comes in and hits the fast forward button.
That is a highly accurate way to frame the municipal finances here. And that reverse mortgage, it was about to come due.
So they hit the panic button.
Essentially, yeah. The master plan is the realization that the city had run out of runway. So that target of 4,000 new units by 2046, it isn't just about adding density. It's this desperate, highly calibrated catch-up mechanism to correct 2 decades of neglect.
I have to push back a little bit on this highly calibrated idea, though, because adding 4,000 units to a mature, already built-out enclave, that translates to a 35% jump in population.
It's a massive demographic shock.
Yeah. A 35% bump on an already built-out island doesn't sound like a masterclass. It sounds like guaranteed infrastructure collapse.
Right, because of the aging pipes and roads.
Exactly. You're talking about adding thousands of cars to the roads and like thousands of toilets flushing at 7 in the morning. How does a quiet enclave absorb that kind of shock without just breaking the city entirely?
This raises an important question, right? How do you absorb that demographic shock without destroying the host organism? Because you can't just zone for 40-story glass towers and hope the sewer system holds up.
Right, that would be a disaster.
Total disaster. So the master plan manages the load through a very deliberate dual-target demographic strategy. They're engineering exactly who will live in these units to, balance the strain.
Okay, so they aren't just throwing up a for rent sign to the general public. They actually have a specific migration pattern in mind.
Exactly. The first migration target is actually internal.
Internal?
Yeah. So Côte-Saint-Luc has a massive population of seniors who are heavily overhoused right now.
I see.
They are living in these large four-bedroom single-family homes that they bought back in the 1970s, and the maintenance on those homes is becoming completely unmanageable, but they absolutely refuse to leave the
Yeah,
municipality.
because their whole lives are there.
Right. Their doctors are there, their community centers, their places of worship, all of it.
But because of that 20-year freeze on development we talked about, there are literally no modern accessible condos in their own neighborhood to
Right.
downsize into.
Exactly.
So they are basically trapped in their own four-bedroom homes.
Which means those homes are kept off the market. So phase one of the physical build is specifically tailored for this demographic. We're talking adapted, highly accessible condos and mid-rise apartments.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. By moving these seniors out of their sprawling detached homes and into dense, manageable footprints, you free up the existing housing stock without adding a single new car to the morning commute.
Because these residents are already retired, they aren't driving to work at 8 a.m. anyway. And unlocking those 1970s single-family homes, that's what triggers the second target demographic, right?
Spot on. The missing middle. Young families are currently being, just priced off the island of Montreal entirely.
Oh yeah, it's impossible right now.
So the master plan is actively courting those young families to buy those freed-up bungalows. But they are also building brand new townhouses and family-sized, three-bedroom apartments to create a proper price ladder.
I noticed in the source material, it also mentioned a major overhaul to the bureaucratic side of this. Like, they are aggressively streamlining the municipal permitting process.
It is a vital mechanism for this whole thing to work. Think about it. If a young family buys a dilapidated bungalow from a downsizing senior, the last thing the city wants is for that family to spend 2 years fighting the zoning board.
Right, just to modernize the kitchen or, add an extra bedroom.
Exactly. So by fast-tracking renovation permits, they incentivize families to upgrade the existing stock. It brings the old neighborhoods up to modern energy and safety standards, and it uses private money to do it.
It is a brilliant chain reaction on paper.
Yeah.
You build the accessible condo, the senior moves in, the young family buys the senior's old house, the city fast-tracks the renovation.
Win, win, win.
Yeah, but there is a massive, glaring physical contradiction here.
Which is?
Côte-Saint-Luc is landlocked by other municipalities. There are no vast tracts of empty forests to clear. Where are you physically pouring the concrete for 4,000 new units?
Well, you have to identify what urban planners call gray fields.
Gray fields.
Yeah. These are massive expanses of privately owned land that are heavily paved, structurally obsolete, and economically underperforming. And in this case, the administration targeted 3 specific sites: De Carey Square, Cordier Cavendish, and the Côte-Saint-Luc Shopping Center.
Wow. The holy trinity of 1980s suburban retail.
Pretty much.
I mean, these places used to be the absolute center of gravity for the community. But the master plan data is brutal. Foot traffic has flatlined and the buildings themselves are functionally obsolete.
They are essentially just heat islands of empty asphalt at this point.
Right.
But for an urban planner, an underperforming mall is the ultimate canvas. So the ownership groups of these 3 malls are entering this collaborative process with the city for a gradual, phased demolition.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because tearing down the local mall is the total reversal of the North American suburban dream.
Oh, completely.
Like, the entire post-war logic was based on isolation. You buy a house on a quiet cul-de-sac, and you absolutely must get into a car and drive across a major arterial road to a big concrete box just to buy groceries.
Yep, the car was king.
And now they are erasing the concrete box entirely to build what the master plan calls a 15-minute city.
Right. The 15-minute city concept is a fundamental paradigm shift away from that old zoning by isolation.
Because the traditional model strictly separated everything. Residential here, commercial over there, industrial way out there.
Exactly. But this new blueprint embraces mixed-use floor area ratios. It is about stacking life rather than spreading it out across a map.
Right. If you demolish 3 massive shopping malls, you are vaporizing your commercial tax base. Well, I mean, retail properties pay significantly higher tax rates than residential properties.
Right.
So destroying your commercial footprint to build condos, that sounds like a fast track to bankruptcy for the city.
What's fascinating here is that the commercial footprint doesn't actually disappear at all.
It doesn't.
No, it just gets reconfigured. The master plan isn't replacing malls with purely residential towers. They are mandating commercial ground floors.
Oh, okay.
So when you build a mid-rise development, the entire street level is dedicated to cafes, pharmacies, small grocers, and medical clinics. The residential units, those adapted condos and family apartments we talked about, are built right on top of that commercial base.
Okay, so you aren't losing the retail square footage. You are just stretching it out along these tree-lined, walkable corridors instead of trapping it inside a windowless, climate-controlled box.
Exactly. And you are embedding a permanent customer base directly above those businesses. That is the core engine of the 15-minute city.
Oh, that makes sense.
So that senior resident we discussed earlier, they don't need to retain a driver's license just to get groceries or see their pharmacist. They literally just take the elevator to the ground floor.
That's amazing. I do want to dig into the actual timeline of this, though, because you don't just dynamite 3 active shopping malls on a Tuesday and leave thousands of people without a grocery store for 5 years.
No, definitely not.
Right, while you build this mixed-use utopia. So how does a gradual demolition actually function in the real world?
It requires meticulous phasing, usually starting with the parking lots, because a traditional suburban mall is often like 20% building and 80% asphalt parking.
Yeah, seas of parking.
Right. So developers will break ground on the furthest edges of those parking lots first, building the initial mid-rise residential structures, while the core mall continues to operate normally.
So the mall's existing grocery store survives to service that first wave of new residents.
Exactly. Then, as the new development builds out its own ground floor retail spaces, the essential services sort of migrate into the new buildings.
Ah, I see.
And only once that transition is totally secure do the excavators start tearing down the old dead wings of the mall to make way for the next phase of residential blocks.
So it's like a slow, methodical replacement of the urban tissue.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean for the financial health of the city? Because building a utopian, walkable neighborhood is obviously highly lucrative for the private developers who own the land.
Oh, for sure.
But what is the concrete benefit for the existing resident? Like the person who lives 4 streets over and has to deal with the dust, the cement trucks, and the noise of a 20-year construction project.
That is the ultimate test of any master plan, right?
Yeah.
The municipal return on investment. Because Côte-Saint-Luc has essentially been operating on that reverse mortgage we talked about, their infrastructure is really suffering.
Yeah.
The addition of 4,000 units translates to tens of millions of dollars in net new annual property tax revenues.
Tens of millions of new money flowing into a system that hasn't seen growth in 2 decades.
But how is that money actually being deployed? The master plan outlines some very specific earmarks rather than just, throwing it into a general slush fund.
Yes. The primary earmark is a complete overhaul of the unseen city.
The unseen city.
Yeah, things like replacing underground sewage pipes or upgrading water pressure grids. It is very difficult for a politician to campaign on that stuff, but it's the absolute lifeblood of a municipality.
Oh, totally.
The revenue from these new dense cores will basically subsidize the modernization of the entire city's grid.
Wow. So the density development essentially pays for the upkeep of these sprawling, older, single-family neighborhoods.
It is a direct wealth transfer in that way.
Yeah.
But beyond the pipes, the master plan focuses heavily on the surface map, too.
Okay.
Côte-Saint-Luc has a very unique, restrictive geography. It is heavily scarred by railway infrastructure.
Right, I saw that in the sources. Major train lines just cut right through the city, creating these physical barriers that isolate certain enclaves.
Exactly. Historically, if you lived on the wrong side of the tracks, accessing the central municipal library or the main recreation center was a major logistical hurdle.
And the source material specifically highlighted a strategy to fix this using satellite services.
Yes.
But I'm looking at this and thinking, well, you can't just move the railway tracks. And building a brand new multi-million-dollar library branch in every single isolated neighborhood isn't financially viable, even with the new tax revenue.
Yeah.
So how do they physically bridge that divide?
Well, this is where the mixed-use zoning becomes a municipal tool. The city doesn't need to build a massive standalone library branch. Instead, they can lease the ground floor commercial space in one of these new developer-built mid-rises.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They insert satellite municipal services directly into the residential developments on the isolated sides of the tracks.
That is remarkably efficient.
Yeah.
You bring the government services directly to the isolated residents by just taking up retail space in their own buildings.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally alters mobility.
How so?
By decentralizing services and mandating that ground floor retail, you remove the necessity of the automobile for daily survival. The master plan couples this with a massive investment in active transportation. We're talking protected bike lanes and pedestrian corridors cutting through what used to be, vast parking lots.
It is a complete inversion of how the suburb was built in the first place.
Total inversion.
But I have to bring us to the reality of human nature here, because the math checks out. The architectural philosophy is sound. But anytime a mayor stands up and announces a 35% increase in population and the demolition of local landmarks...
Oh, people usually lose their minds.
Exactly. The resulting civic outrage is legendary. People will literally chain themselves to the doors of a failing mall just to prevent a zoning change.
Very true.
So how did Mayor Tordjman not get immediately recalled by his own voters?
Well, the typical reaction is fierce NIMBYism, right? Not in my backyard. It's fueled by a fear of the unknown. But the documentation around the public consultations for this plan reveals a very different narrative. Over 3,000 residents actively participated in the consultation process.
3,000.
Yeah.
For context, getting a few dozen people to show up to a zoning meeting on a Tuesday night is considered a success in most towns.
Right.
So I want you, the listener, to just imagine your own neighborhood. Imagine getting 3,000 of your neighbors to actively participate in urban planning. That is a massive democratic mandate. What was the specific argument that won them over? Because saying we're building a 15-minute city sounds like planner jargon that usually just alienates voters.
You're right, it does. But the administration didn't sell them on architectural philosophy. They sold them on hard demographic and financial reality.
Wow.
The turning point was transparency regarding the actual cost of inaction. They showed the residents the projected property tax curve if the city did not add these 4,000 units. Yeah. When residents saw the sheer numbers required to fix the water mains and the roads, and saw that costs spread across the existing stagnant population, the resistance just began to crumble.
So it literally became a choice between accepting construction or accepting bankruptcy.
Exactly. And it was doubly personal, too. The administration laid out the demographic cliff. They showed the seniors the data indicating they would be forced into care homes far outside the city limits.
Because there was no local housing stock to support them.
Exactly. And they showed the parents that their children would never be able to afford a home near them.
Wow. They made the consequences of preserving the status quo far more terrifying than the disruption of 20 years of excavators.
That's exactly what they did. And because they approached it with that level of stark honesty, the master plan was ultimately negotiated with the community rather than imposed upon them. The residents accepted the density because they understood it was the ransom required to save their city's autonomy.
That is the real takeaway from this entire document. We started this deep dive looking at a municipality that was seemingly frozen in time, quietly suffocating under the weight of its own aging infrastructure and obsolete commercial monoliths.
Yeah.
And what Côte-Saint-Luc has managed to draft is essentially a survival manual for the modern suburb. They are taking their biggest liability, those vast, dead mall parking lots, and transforming them into the financial and social engines that will keep the city alive for the next century.
And really, it serves as a stark warning to other municipalities. The era of outward sprawl is basically over. The only way forward is internal reinvention.
So for everyone listening, the next time you are sitting at a red light staring at a half-empty suburban mall, don't just see a relic of 1980s retail. Look at the asphalt and recognize that you are probably looking at the future footprint of your own 15-minute city.
Because the Côte-Saint-Luc model is coming.
Exactly. And it is going to completely rewrite the real estate map when those excavators finally arrive.
Although, as this monumental shift begins, it leaves us with one highly practical challenge to monitor over the next 2 decades.
What's that?
Well, we know the mechanical phasing of this plan. Building on the parking lots, slowly dismantling the malls. But consider the social phasing. For 20 years, this community will be living in a construction zone. The old gathering spaces, the food courts, and the mall promenades, they will be actively demolished before the new, vibrant, walkable neighborhoods are fully mature. So how does a community maintain its social cohesion during a 2-decade awkward phase when the old world is gone, but the new world is still covered in scaffolding?
Wow. That is a phenomenal tension to leave on. The messy reality of a city reinventing itself in real time.
Yeah.
Definitely something to keep a close eye on as the gray fields start getting torn up. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching this video. For more news and in-depth reports, visit wikiresidence.ca. All our content is available in text and audio formats across all your devices. Please feel free to share your comments with us.